So what I'm suggesting to you as you begin this 29th conference with us, develop this map, if you will, and as you're in a session at a certain point, look at this picture and say, where are we now? Are we in one of the forms of thought? Are we applying a framework of thought? Are we working with a concept? What is my personal narrative relevant here? How does the history of thought bear upon this? Or is this part of the history of critical thinking? You see, at present, we don't have a developed history of critical thinking. But let me tell you just a little bit about the beginning of that history. The beginning of that history would, it seems to me, describe first the problem that we face historically of the few dominating the many. But then it would come to, after a certain amount of historical narrative, to a person by the name of Socrates, who represents a paradigm, a person who dedicated his life to questioning all established thinking, without any view to making money for it, or gaining power, or gaining advantage. We have this thinker who is a historical marking place for the emergence of critical thinking. He's a paradigm of critical thinking in the strong sense. And he had opposition. His opposition came from a group known as the Sophists. And they didn't all agree. They didn't all disagree with Socrates, but some did. And here is one of them by the name of Thrasymachus. And he said, force not only controls reason, but it always will. When force and reason come into conflict, force always wins. And if you're not on the winning side, you're putting your head in the noose. And so Socrates did. He chose to put his head in the noose and was executed by the state for undermining the morals of the youth. How undermining? He taught the youth to question. And therefore, the authorities had to justify themselves, not simply walk with their stately robes and pontificate. This history, this conflict that began with Socrates versus the Sophists, exists to this day. And to this day, Thrasymachus has won every time. Every time that reason has come into conflict with power, in the big way, power has won. So we would be well advised to be a little bit less concerned with how we can get more and more and more power, and put in a little more effort into what is the reason that is using this power. When we, if I can use with great trepidation a political example, when we say we have the right to kidnap people that we think are dangerous and hold them as long as we want in prisons that we don't inhabit, let's call that rendition. Let's call that renditioning. Let's not call it kidnapping. That doesn't sound very good. Let's have another name for it. And let's realize that these people that we kidnap, since they're not American citizens, don't have any political rights. In other words, let's forget the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Let's pretend it doesn't exist. Then we owe these people nothing. And we can hold them as long as we want. This is power. But is it justice? I don't think so. And this is the kind of thing that we need to think through. Big issues, little issues, hot issues, cold issues, and we must beware we may be wrong. we may be missing some important facts. We may be jumping to conclusions. But we've got to do our thinking nevertheless, and we will be guided by our thinking willy-nilly. There is no way that you can stop your behavior from reflecting your thinking. It's an automatic connection. My thinking runs my behavior whether I like it or not. My only choice is to control the thinking that I'm using, to question it, to test it, to assess it, to be ready to rethink it. This is the program of critical thought. I hope that you'll find it usefully reinforced in your conference sessions. I hope that your narrative of yourself as a critical thinker will begin to be developed by you, and you will see yourself as playing a greater and greater role. And thank you for being here, and have a successful conference.